Part 48. The Prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading. Author, Gongzi Yun Si. Chapter 471. He wore a royal blue brocade robe and a jade crown of the same color. His facial features became more three-dimensional and handsome as he grew older. Go, Miss Han said lightly. Wait for me to come back. Xiao Jinyu stood up and walked to the door, then turned back. By the way, I won't come back for lunch. My sister-in-law's small kitchen cooks delicious food. I haven't eaten it for a long time. Miss Han. Xiao Jinyu stared at his wife for a long time, and saw that she was bored and seemed unhappy. Miss Han yawned, and seeing Xiao Jinyu standing still, she asked, "Why don't you leave?" Xiao Jinyu was a little worried. You stay in the bedroom every day and don't go out. What if you get bored? Come with me to eat. Miss Han shook her head and refused. I'm too lazy to move now, you go. Xiao Jinyu smiled with a curled lip. It's okay, I'll carry you. Miss Han was stunned. Xiao Jinyu bent down, lifted the blanket on her body, and held her horizontally. Miss Han instinctively put her arms around his neck and looked at him in disbelief. Are you serious? Of course, your husband will take you to eat delicious food. Xiao Jinyu smiled and strode out. That extremely gentle tone made Miss Han startled again. Xiao Jinyu strode out of the bedroom. He had someone prepare the sedan chair in advance, just at the door. Quipping saw the prince holding concubine Han from a distance, and felt a little indignant. My lady, look, the prince is holding concubine Han and going out. Wang Zhen paused while watering the flowers, raised her head and looked at the door, and saw Xiao Jinyu holding concubine Han. It has been almost 3 months, and Xiao Jinyu has never stepped into her room, even if she took the initiative to find him. Xiao Jinyu stayed at concubine Han's place every night, as if that was Xiao Jinyu's bedroom. My lady, you must think of a way. While concubine Han is not pregnant yet, you should quickly serve her in bed so that she can be honored as a mother by having a child. Quipping's tone was a little anxious. Prince Yu still has no children. If anyone gets pregnant at this time, it is possible that she can become the principal wife by having a child. Wang Zhen clenched the kettle in her hand and watched the royal blue figure disappear at the door. In the sedan chair, Xiao Jinyu held his wife steadily, looked down at her lazily leaning on his chest, and before reaching the East Palace, he lowered his head and kissed her pink lips. Miss Han slowly opened her eyes and saw a magnified handsome face. At this time, he was extremely gentle, but he seemed to be a different person when he got to bed. He didn't stop until she fainted. Didn't you already? The last 2 words were stopped by the movement of Xiao Jinyu's hands. Xiao Jinyu pressed against her neck, and the hot air he exhaled sprinkled on her neck. You are too thin, there is no meat here. Miss Han raised her eyebrows. Do you dislike it? Xiao Jinyu curled the corners of his lips. How could I dislike my wife? I can't wait to feel pain. Miss Han gave Xiao Jinyu a look that was not bad, and then leaned lazily in his arms. After arriving at the East Palace, Xiao Jinyu walked out of the sedan chair holding his wife and strode into the Hehuan Palace. Sister-in-law. Shen Chuwei was cracking melon seeds. When she heard the voice, she looked up and saw Xiao Jinyu walking in with his wife. They were just discussing something. Why did he bring his family with him? It is rumored that Prince Yu is a wife slave, and it is confirmed. Unlike Xiao Jinyan, he doesn't take her with him when he goes out. After Xiao Jinyu put his wife on the couch, he sat down as well, not treating himself as an outsider at all. After sitting down, he began to order dishes. Sister-in-law, I'll have lunch at your place. Cook more rice. My wife has lost weight recently, so she needs to be nourished. Stew some chicken soup, and another portion of braised pork and braised spare ribs, minced meat vermicelli, minced meat eggplant, that's all. Miss Han. Shen Chuwei. It seems that she is a restaurant here? He even set his eyes on the old hens in her chicken coop. Shen Shuwei glanced at concubine Han, who seemed to have lost some weight. No wonder Xiao Jinyu felt so distressed. Without Shen Shuwei's instructions, Chengzi withdrew to prepare. Xiao Jinyu picked up the teapot and poured a cup of tea, then turned around and handed it to his wife. Have some tea, the tea in Hehuan Hall tastes especially good. Shen Shuwei. How can tea brewed with spiritual spring water be bad? Miss Han took the teacup from his hand, handed it to her lips and took 2 sips. It tasted better than the tea in Qiancheng Hall. After drinking a few sips, I found that my sleepiness had dissipated a lot, and I felt more energetic. Xiao Jinyu then picked up the teapot and poured myself a cup of tea. After taking a sip, he asked, "Sister-in-law, you called me here, what's the matter?" Shen Shuwei finally remembered that I came here for something, not just to eat and drink for free. You know about the new Tanhua, right? Xiao Jinyu took a sip of tea. I know, the youngest Tanhua, the whole capital knows. Shen Shuwei asked again, then you know that many people want to recruit Dahua as a son-in-law, right? Xiao Jinyu nodded. I know, Tanhua Songqing is well educated, talented, and beautiful, and there are countless legitimate daughters and daughters who love him. Shen Shuwei paused while eating melon seeds. Then Songqing is not the dream lover of all the girls in the capital. Xiao Jinyu continued to nod. You can say that. Shen Shuwei cracked 6 melon seeds in a row. Songqing was so popular, how could Tao Liangyuan compete with all the girls in Beijing? That's not right. In terms of appearance, Your Highness is the most handsome man, and Songqing can't be the first, right? Xiao Jinyu paused while drinking tea. He looked at Shen Shuwei, who said something shocking and said, "Do you really want my brother to be the dream lover of all the girls in Beijing?" Shen Shuwei corrected, "Of course not, I'm talking about His Highness's appearance." Xiao Jinyu said, "That also depends on his status. My brother is the crown prince, the future heir, how can they dream of it?" Shen Shuwei, "That's right. Sister-in-law, why are you so concerned about the Tanhua matter?" Xiao Jinyu paused in drinking tea, suddenly raised her head and looked at Shen Shuwei, and said very seriously, "Sister-in-law, my brother is not at home, you can't be so busy, Songqing is not as good as my brother." Miss Han. Shen Shuwei. What kind of brain circuit is this? You don't love such a handsome and loyal husband, but covet Songqing? She's not crazy. What nonsense are you talking about? Xiao Jinyu's peach blossom eyes curved. I was just joking, sister-in-law is not stupid, my brother is so outstanding. Shen Shuwei coughed lightly. I have a friend who likes Songqing, but my friend thinks Songqing is too outstanding and feels that he is not worthy of him, so many people are fighting for Songqing, we have to help her. Xiao Jinyu asked casually, who is your friend? Is she ugly? Shen Shuwei said seriously, of course not ugly. Not ugly? That means she is not beautiful? This is not easy to help. Then how to help? Shen Shuwei said the key point of today, as long as someone is matchmaking for Songqing, you go to ruin it. Xiao Jinyu said honestly, it's a bit unethical to do this. Shen Shuwei did not deny it, yes, a little. Xiao Jinyu waved his hand, it doesn't matter, sister-in-law's business is my business, I will go to Songqing tomorrow and have a deep exchange with him. Shen Shuwei knew that she had found the right person when she heard it. It's done. I'll send you an old hen. When Xiao Jinyu heard that there was an old hen, he was happy to take the matter over. The old hen stewed with ginseng would be the best thing for his wife to nourish her body. During lunch, Xiao Jinyu really didn't treat himself as an outsider and kept picking up dishes for his wife. Miss Han looked at the dishes in the bowl piled up into a small mountain. She looked up at Xiao Jinyu, who was still picking up dishes for her, and said, enough. Xiao Jinyu saw that the bowl was full, so she stopped picking up dishes. Then you eat quickly. I'll pick up more after you finish eating. Miss Han lowered her head and ate the food in the bowl slowly. Shen Shuwei was fed a big mouthful of dog food. She lowered her head and took a few mouthfuls of rice to comfort her abused heart. After lunch, Xiao Jinyu was full and picked up his wife and strode out of the Hehuan palace. Shen Shuwei held Xiao Jinyu's hand like a wife-slave. She missed Xiao Jinyan so much. She hadn't seen Xiao Jinyan for 3 months, and she didn't say how long it would take to come back. She held her chin with both hands. This month's letter has not come yet. After Xiao Jinyan left, he would write a letter every month to report his safety, but this month it was delayed for several days. Shen Shuwei picked up the teacup, drank a few sips of tea, put on her shoes and walked out. As soon as she walked into the yard, she saw her subordinates Zhengzi and Qin Xiao. They were talking and laughing, as if they were talking about something happy. Qin Xiao likes Zhengzi. Who does Zhengzi like? Qin Xiao is the only real man in Hehuan Palace, and the rest are eunuchs. Looking at Qin Xiao and Zhengzi, she felt that they were quite a match. Zhengzi said while embroidering, "I've been free recently, so I made a pair of shoes for you. You can try them later." Okay. Qin Xiao looked down at the shoes on his feet. They were made by Zhengzi for her last year. The soles were worn out, but he was reluctant to throw them away, so he kept wearing them. Shen Shuwei came over. She really didn't want to disturb the two people's interest in chatting, but she wanted to know why Xiao Jinyan hadn't written back yet. Qin Xiao. Qin Xiao turned around and saw Shen Shuwei. He immediately stood up and saluted, "Crown Princess." Shen Shuwei asked, "Why hasn't your highness sent back this month's letter?" Qin Xiao said, "I don't know, I'll go ask later." Shen Shuwei was a little disappointed. "Okay, tell me as soon as you find out." Qin Xiao lowered his eyebrows and nodded, "I obey your order." Since that time, Tao Liangyuan has not come so frequently, and she only comes to Hehuan Hall to chat with Shen Shuwei. Shen Shuwei told Tao Liangyuan about Prince Yu's help. "Prince Yu is reliable. I have thought a lot these days. Maybe Song Qing and I are destined not to be together. He is too outstanding." Tao Liangyuan sighed after saying this, a little unwilling to finally meet someone she likes. Shen Shuwei didn't know what Song Qing was thinking, and she couldn't make a decision for Tao Liangyuan. "You haven't seen Song Qing for a while. Let's go to the study next door." Tao Liangyuan hesitated, but she really missed Song Qing after not seeing him for a few days, so she nodded and followed Shen Shuwei. This time, she didn't spend time with Song Qing alone, and didn't put pressure and burden on him. After not seeing him for a few days, I don't know if Song Qing is happy or. Good night, babies. Being cute and asking for monthly tickets and recommendation tickets for support. The prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading. Author, Gongzi Yun Si. Chapter 472. When Shen Shuwei and Tao Liangyuan arrived, Song Qing was sitting in front of the desk drinking tea and reading, and Dao Tao and Chu Lingfen were practicing calligraphy. Already reaching the door of the study, Tao Liangyuan hesitated again. When Shen Shuwei saw her standing still, he reached out and held her hand and walked in. Tao Liangyuan was forced to follow her in. When she saw Song Qing, she hadn't seen him for several days. He hadn't changed, but his eyes seemed a little different from before. Song Qing paid the most attention to etiquette and rules. When he saw the Crown Princess and Tao Liangyuan arriving, he immediately stood up and said, "Crown Princess, Tao Liangyuan." Shen Chu said softly, "You continue reading, and I'll come over to see how Dao Tao writes." Song Qing nodded and returned to the desk to continue reading. Shen Chu glanced sideways at Tao Liangyuan and saw her shaking her head. She patted her shoulder comfortingly and then came to Dao Tao's desk. Tao Liangyuan watched Song Qing lower his head and continue reading. She didn't look for a topic like before. She came to the bookshelf, took out a book and opened it. She didn't know why Song Qing liked reading books about sages so much, but she didn't like reading them. The book Shen Shuwei gave me is nice. She was holding the book at the moment, it didn't matter whether she read it or not, she was just pretending. Tao Lianyuan heard the rustle of turning books in her ears, coming from Songqing. She looked at Songqing's hairband, which was green and embroidered with bamboo leaves. The book was taken down. Tao Lianyuan was staring at the bamboo leaves when she suddenly heard Songqing talking. Because she was distracted and did not hear what he said clearly, she looked at Songqing doubtfully. Songqing repeated again, the book was knocked down. Tao Lianyuan heard clearly this time. She looked down at the book in her hand and found that it had been knocked down. She blushed with embarrassment and hurriedly turned the book over and straightened it. Songqing looked at Tao Lianjiayuan's actions, then looked away, and the corners of her lips curved slightly with an imperceptible arc. Although Dao Tao is only 17 months old, from the beginning of drawing ghost symbols to now being able to clearly recognize the words he writes, it can be said that she is much better than her peers. Shen Shuwei actually didn't have any requirements for her son, but as a royal family, she didn't ask for anything if she didn't want it. Xiao Jinyan only had a son, so how could he not be good? Looking at the handwriting written by her son, she felt that it was already very impressive. Dao Tao raised her head and looked at her mother, her phoenix eyes curled up happily, mother's concubine. Shen Shuwei praised without hesitation, my son is great. He can write at just over a year old. When my mother was over a year old, she only knew how to eat. In fact, she doesn't remember what she was doing when she was as big as Dao Tao. However, thinking about her like this, most of the time she was doing other than eating. Dao Tao put down the ink pen, picked up the rice paper on the desk and raised it happily, I want to show my father the nest. Shen Chu slightly touched Dao Tao's head as if to comfort him, when your father comes back, you can show it to him. Dao Tao put down the rice paper silently. He hadn't seen his father for 3 months. He didn't know why his father hadn't come back for so long. Holding the pen in his hand, Chu Lingfeng looked at the warm scene of the crown princess and the crown prince getting along with his eyes with envy. Little pot, little sugar. When Chu Lingfeng heard the sound, she turned her head and saw the little princess holding up her hand. In her hand was a candy wrapped in green candy wrapper. Then she looked at her pink and tender face, looking at her expectantly. Thank you, little princess. Chu Lingfeng took the candy from her hand. Susu happily took out another candy from her bag and raised it in front of Chu Lingfeng, a small pot is better than a nest. Chu Lingfeng glanced at the candy in front of him, and then looked at her expected behavior, and roughly guessed that she wanted to peel off the candy wrapper. He took the candy from her hand, and then slowly peeled off the candy wrapper. As soon as he peeled it off, a little hand stretched out eagerly, as if he was afraid of being eaten by him. A slight smile appeared on his lips and he gave the candy to her. Susu took the candy and stuffed it into her mouth. When she tasted the sweetness, she immediately raised her eyebrows happily. She threw herself into Chu Lingfeng's arms, little Guo Guo, let's go play together. Chu Lingfeng put the candy into his sleeve pocket and looked at the little princess who suddenly threw herself into his arms, her dark and shining eyes seemed to be able to speak. When I finish writing, I will play with you. Oh, although Susu was young, she could understand the general meaning of Chu Lingfeng's words. Shen Shuwei had already noticed that her precious daughter was here, so she took her daughter with her when she left so as not to disturb Chu Lingfeng's calligraphy practice. Shen Shuwei told Tao Lianyuan that Xiao Jinyu planned to have in-depth communication with Songqing. Tao Lianyuan was a little worried, Prince Yu won't use his power to suppress others, right? Shen Shuwei comforted him, don't worry, although King Yu has the potential of a little bully, he has matured a lot after getting married and will not be so naive. Tao Lianyuan breathed a sigh of relief, that's good, I'll keep trying. After Tao Lianyuan left, Shen Shuwei took Susu to Xiun Pavilion to see how the watermelon was doing. He wondered if he could come back in time to eat the watermelon. Xiaobai followed closely behind, and none of the passing maids and eunuchs dared to approach. When they arrived at Xiun Pavilion, Shen Shuwei saw that the watermelon vine was growing well. When she turned around, she found a man and a tiger lying on the fence next to the chicken coop. Every time they came to Xiun Pavilion, Susu and Xiaobai would stare at the chicken coop. The former wanted to play with the chickens, while the latter just wanted to eat. Susu put her little hand into the fence, pointed at the chicken and shouted, "Gigi, come out and play." Not to be outdone, Xiaobai put his claws in and howled, scaring a group of chickens to paralysis. Shen Chu slightly shouted, "Susu, Xiaobai." Susu turned around and saw her mother-in-law, and immediately retracted her hand and came over. Xiaobai also retracted his paws and walked over with his head lowered. He walked very slowly, like a child who had done something wrong. Susu hugged her mother's thigh, raised her little face and asked with a sweet voice, "Mom, I miss you so much." Shen Shuwei looked at her daughter, inexplicably feeling that the scene looked very familiar. In the afternoon, Shen Shuwei woke up and saw a small figure lying on the couch. He reached into the cabinet with his little hand, grabbed a handful of candies and stuffed them into his satchel. There are only 3 candies in the bag every day, and they are gone after eating them. This will steal the candy, indicating that the candy in the bag has been eaten. "Susu, don't eat too much candy, or your teeth will be eaten by bugs," Shen Shuwei said and put the candy back in her bag. Seeing that the candy in the bag was gone, Susu threw herself into the arms of her mother-in-law and said aggrievedly, "Mom, I miss my father so much." Shen Shuwei. She found out why her daughter's behavior looked so familiar, because she often said the sentence when she was happy. Is this also hereditary? Even so, Shen Shuwei didn't give Susu any candy. When Qin Xiao came, he came from outside the palace and carried a lot of things in large and small bags. When passing by Chengzi, he placed one of the bags in front of her. "It's for you." Chengzi saw an extra bag of things in front of her, raised her head and saw Qin Xiao. "Why are you buying me something again?" Qin Xiao said, "I bought it when I saw it. I'll go see the princess first." Chengzi nodded. After Qin Xiao left, Chengzi opened the bag and saw a piece of cloth inside. The color was beautiful. In addition to the cloth, there is also food, wrapped in oil paper, which should be pastries. Whenever Qin Xiao goes out of the palace to buy things, he will buy some for Chengzi. He will buy food when he sees it. When Shen Shuwei saw Qin Xiao coming in, he didn't care about eating anymore. "Has His Highness's letter home arrived?" Qin Xiao shook his head, "No." Oh, Shen Chu looked away slightly disappointedly. When he saw the big and small bags in Qin Xiao's hand, he knew they were for food without even looking. She didn't care about food now. She looked back at Qin Xiao and continued to ask, "Then you ask why this month's letter home has been delayed for so long?" Qin Xiao said, "My subordinates have already asked, but we don't know the reason yet." "Then I'll write a letter and ask." As Shen Shuwei said that, he took out a pen and paper and wrote a letter. The letter was not long, just a few hundred words. After finishing writing, she folded the letter, put it in an envelope, sealed it, and handed it to Qin Xiao. After the letter was sent, Shen Shuwei began to look forward to a reply. The queen came here in a hurry to have lunch. She had not eaten with the crown princess for some days, so she happened to see her grandchildren. Shen Shuwei looked at the queen across from her and put chicken legs for Dao Tao and Susu. She thought of Xiao Jinyan and asked, "Mother, Your Highness's letter from home this month has not been sent for more than 10 days. Is the battle on the front line very intense?" Shen Shuwei only learned some things about the front line from letters. Xiao Jinyan had won consecutive battles, but now more than a month had passed and he didn't know how the battle was going. The queen's smile froze. This was the reason why she didn't dare to come to the East Palace, because she was afraid that Shen Shuwei would ask her about the prince. "I don't know. I didn't write home because I was too busy. This time Daxia faces not only the Sueya kingdom, but also the Fenki kingdom. It is inevitable that the war will be fierce. Shen Shuwei thought of the cruel and bloody scenes on the battlefield and couldn't help but worry, then he is too busy and doesn't even have time to write letters. Is he not even able to sleep? The queen looked at the worried look on Shen Shuwei's face. If she knew that the prince fell off the cliff and disappeared, she would definitely be sad. She lowered her head with a guilty conscience. Susu took a bite of the chicken drumstick in her hand, puffed out her cheeks and said, "Father, Prince Hui is here to buy something good for me." Shen Shuwei raised his head and looked at his daughter, only to see that her mouth was full of oil and her chubby little face was also shiny. Her mouth was full and it was not enough. She still thought that her father would come back to buy food. But having said that, Chengzi must kill an extra chicken tomorrow, otherwise she won't even get the chicken legs to eat. The queen was afraid that she would spill the beans, so she played with Susu for a while and then returned to Fenji Palace. At night, when the dog emperor came, the queen asked, "Have you found the prince?" The emperor shook his head, "There is no news about the prince in Mobei yet." No news does not mean it is bad news. As long as he is not found, it means he is still alive. The queen also felt that what Emperor Dog said made sense. "I went to the East Palace today to see my grandchildren." The crown princess asked about it. The crown prince's letter from home this month was not sent. Susu also misses her father. Susu has not seen her father for 3 months, so she will definitely think that she is just too young and doesn't understand anything. I have sent someone to ask Lu Zayan to come back quickly, and then let Lu Zayan tell the prince's fortune. Good evening, babies. Please support with monthly votes and recommendation votes. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading. Author, Gongzi Iyun Si. Chapter 473. Lu Zayan relied on his master's young age to become the director of the Imperial Observatory, mainly observing the stars at night and telling fortunes. If his master hadn't retired early, it wouldn't have been his turn as a young man. Fortune-telling was just a part-time job, but it turned out to be a serious career. Lu Zayan returned to the mountain to accompany his master during this period, and he rushed to the capital without stopping after receiving the imperial edict. It took 5 days to finally get back to the capital, and he went to the imperial study as soon as possible. Lu Zayan stepped forward and bowed, "Your Majesty, why did you call me back so quickly?" The emperor frowned and said, "The prince fell off a cliff in Mobei and disappeared. I asked you to tell the prince's fortune to see how he is now." "I obey your order," but Lu Zayan paused for a while before saying, "I am not proficient in fortune-telling, and it will take some time." He had only been in fortune-telling for a short time, unlike observing the stars at night, which he had practiced since childhood. He didn't dare to boast in front of the emperor. Although the emperor was worried about the prince's safety, he was not unreasonable. He nodded and agreed, "Don't keep me waiting too long." Lu Zayan lowered his eyebrows and eyes, "I will calculate the result as soon as possible." The emperor waved his hand, and Lu Zayan left the imperial study. After leaving the palace for several months, Lu Zayan did not expect that the prince would be in trouble. Although he had calculated that the prince was doomed earlier, he thought it had been resolved. After returning to his residence, he took out the books and began to calculate the prince's situation. Although Tao Liangyuan has not come frequently recently, she always brings something every time she comes. This time she followed Shen Shuwei to the study with cooked corn. The corn seeds given to her by Shen Shuwei are only planted on 1 acre of land every year. Scarcity makes things expensive, so the price will be higher, and only rich people can afford it. Because there are too few, rich people will use corn to entertain guests. On the one hand, It can show their appreciation for the guests, and at the same time, it also demonstrates their own strength. Who would have thought that a bag of corn seeds would make the Tao family rich? Tao Liangyuan gave Shen Shuwei 5,000 taels of gold as dividends. Shen Shuwei had seen so much gold in her life, and 5,000 taels of gold was not silver. But Shen Shuwei still refused, because she had said at the beginning that she would not accept dividends. After Tao Liangyuan's repeated persuasion, Shen Shuwei accepted the gold. Looking at the 5,000 taels of gold and silver notes, she felt confident. The corn in Xiun Pavilion was also ripe, and Shen Shuwei sent some to the queen and Xiao Jinyu to taste the first batch of corn. Tao Liangyuan, why did you send corn to Songqing? The reason for asking this was that Chengzi cooked corn today, and Songqing also ate it. Tao Liangyuan smiled and explained, corn, jade, and meat the same sound, there is a meaning. Shen Shuwei found that Tao Liangyuan was really attentive to Songqing. Only corn, no matter how smart Songqing is, he can't guess the meaning, right? Tao Liangyuan said indifferently, then I will remind him. Shen Shuwei nodded, looking forward to how Tao Liangyuan reminded Songqing. After entering the study, Tao Liangyuan came to Songqing with corn wrapped in oil paper, which was still warm. I brought 2 corns to see you, Tao Liangyuan said in one breath, and her face turned red after she finished speaking, because it was too obvious, but she didn't care, even wrote a love letter, not afraid. Songqing looked at Tao Liangyuan in confusion. Seeing him staring at her without saying anything, Tao Liangyuan put the 2 corns in her hand on the desk in front of him. I hope you like it. After saying that, she turned and left. Shen Shuwei had been observing Tao Liangyuan and Songqing. When she saw Tao Liangyuan put down the corn and left, she saw Songqing looking at Tao Liangyuan with a confused look on his face. When Tao Liangyuan came over, Shen Shuwei asked curiously, why don't you say a few more words? Tao Liangyuan turned back and secretly glanced at Songqing, only to see him staring at the corn. He is so smart, he should understand. Shen Shuwei, but some nerds put their intelligence on reading. Not really. Tao Liangyuan looked back at Songqing again and found that Songqing was writing with a pen. Shen Shuwei said, it's hard to say. After Songqing finished writing, he put down the red pen, looked at the line of words on the rice paper, and silently said in his heart, I brought 2 corns to see you, I hope you like it. Asterisk. When Xiao Jinyu returned to Jiancheng Hall, he happened to meet the little rabbit who sent corn. He had eaten corn before, and it tasted sweet and good. He took the corn and walked into Han Yuxuan directly. As soon as he walked in, he saw his wife holding a kettle to water the flowers. These days, Miss Han has been sleepy. It has only improved in the past 2 days, so she came out to water the flowers. Xiao Jinyu strode over, stepped forward, and hugged his wife's slender waist, raised a few corns in his hand and said with a smile, sister-in-law sent corn, it's still hot, you try it? Miss Han looked at the corn in Xiao Jinyu's hand, which was steaming, and the fragrance was immediately fragrant. It smells so good. Xiao Jinyu took the kettle from her and put it on the table beside her, then walked in with his wife. After entering, Xiao Jinyu took his wife and sat down on the couch, opened the oil paper bag, took out a corn and handed it to his wife, eat it while it's hot, it smells especially good. Miss Han took the corn and handed it to her lips and took a bite. The corn was very tender, juicy and sweet, and tasted very good. Xiao Jinyu took out a corn and took a bite, and did not forget to report the afternoon schedule to his wife. I have to go out of the palace later. Song Tanhua is going to have a blind date, and I have to go to make it yellow. Do you want to go out and relax together? Miss Han was eating corn and was not interested in ruining other people's marriages. No, go by yourself. Xiao Jinyu felt sorry for his wife who was staying in the deep palace and was depressed. I find that you are getting lazier and lazier now. You don't even want to go out. Is it because you have been in the palace for too long? Miss Han paused while biting the corn, raised her head and looked at the man beside her. She saw that his eyes were full of worry. She smiled lightly, I just like quietness. Besides, I don't care how long I stay in the palace with you. Xiao Jinyu was moved by her words, Ian, you are so nice. Miss Han smiled lightly, eat corn. Xiao Jinyu saw his wife smiling and couldn't help but look at her a few more times, because his wife rarely smiled. Well, my sister-in-law said that corn is a coarse grain. Eating more is good for you. After eating the corn, Xiao Jinyu lay on his wife for a long time, and then reluctantly left the palace. On the prosperous streets of the capital, the people who come in and out of Wuzihu are all dignitaries. It is said that the boss behind the scenes is someone from the palace, and ordinary people can hardly enter. Song Qing doesn't like this kind of blind date, but he is a colleague and has been rejected once, so he came here. Walking into the agreed private room, Song Qing found that there were only 3 people inside, the Prime Minister and 2 young women. Song Qing stepped forward and saluted, the subordinate greets the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister smiled and said, Song Tanhua, there is no need to be polite, sit down and talk. Song Qing nodded and sat down at the square table. The Prime Minister happily introduced the 2 daughters beside him, Song Tanhua, these 2 are my 2 daughters, the eldest daughter Xinyu, 16 years old, and this is the second daughter Xinlian, 15 years old. Song Qing smiled and nodded, and regarded it as an acquaintance. At the same time, in the private room next door, there was also a blind date. Su Qingqing was drinking tea boredly with a teacup. This was her 18th time to go home for a blind date. She was almost depressed by the urging to get married. The family doesn't lack food for her, why do they force her to get married? The man sitting opposite is the newly promoted champion, about 23 years old, not as tall as Jun Wuxian, but stronger than Jun Wuxian, and even worse in appearance. If she marries him, the genes of the next generation's appearance will be greatly discounted, so what's the point of being a champion? The man sitting next to Su Qingqing is her younger brother Su Changfeng, who accompanies her every blind date. He is handsome and heroic. Su Qingqing drank 3 cups of tea in a row, and was kicked in the calf by Su Changfeng, indicating that she should express her opinion. Champion, you are excellent, but I have a tendency to violence. We are not suitable. You will meet a gentlewoman, Su Qingqing said with an embarrassed but polite smile. The champion was originally very satisfied with Su Qingqing. Whether it was her appearance or her family background, she was very suitable. He was the champion, and it could be said that they were well matched. In the end, he was rejected. Su Changfeng looked at the top scholar. Not only did his sister look down on him, but he also looked down on him. He was at least as tall as him, right? He was not handsome, but at least more handsome, right? But he didn't get it either. After his sister expressed her feelings, he didn't stay for long and pulled her out of the box. Su Qingqing breathed a sigh of relief, and finally she could go home. Su Changfeng pulled his sister and pointed to the private room next door, with a smirk on his face, Sister, do you know who is going on a blind date next door? Su Qingqing subconsciously thought that they were in the same boat. Who? Is it because they are too old to get married? Why do you care whether they are easy to get married? The point is, the one in there is the new 3rd place winner. Let's go and join in the fun. Maybe we will be favored by the 3rd place winner. Good night. Babies, please support with monthly tickets and recommendation tickets. The prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading. Author, Gongzi Yun Si. Chapter 474. Chapter 474 Helping my sister to snatch a man, I won't be alone with Jun Wuxian. Su Changfeng had met Song Qing twice. Although he was a weak scholar, he had a good-looking face, otherwise he wouldn't have been a 3rd place winner. The point is that he was not only good looking, but also had a slender figure, as tall as him, a little thin, and a gentle and elegant person. He was the best candidate for a brother-in-law. Su Qingqing had met the third-place winner Song Cheng. He was handsome and well-educated. When she heard that the third-place winner was on a blind date, she couldn't help but feel a little curious. Just when Su Qingqing was curious, her arm was grabbed by Su Changfeng, and he pushed open the private room next door and went in. The people inside were talking about Shen Huan, but were interrupted by the sudden sound of the door opening. Four eyes looked at the door together with confusion. The Prime Minister recognized them as General Su's son and daughter. He said with a fake smile, "Isn't this Mr. Su? How can you be so rude?" Su Changfen naturally heard the sarcasm in the Prime Minister's words. He smiled slightly, "I just drank a little and walked into the wrong door." He glanced at the two daughters of the Prime Minister and the top scholar in the private room, and said with a smile, "Are these two the Prime Minister's daughters?" Rumor has it that the daughter is not good looking and has a plain appearance. Seeing is believing, she is much better than the rumors, and she is still presentable. If Shen Chuwei were here, he would find that Su Changfeng's ability to confront people is twice as good as Su Qingqing's. Being told that his daughter was ugly in front of him, the Prime Minister's face immediately darkened. Seeing Su Qingqing beside Su Changfeng, he smiled and said, "Mr. Su, are you accompanying your sister to a blind date today? How many times have you tried? Still not liked? If you still don't like her, she's too old." Su Changfeng glanced at the Prime Minister's two daughters and laughed instead of getting angry. "Prime Minister, you are joking. My sister looks more delicate than the other daughters." The Prime Minister clenched his fists in anger, but he restrained himself from getting angry. The power of the Su family was there, and it would not be good for him to tear his face. Just as the Prime Minister and Su Changfeng were quarreling with each other, Su Qingqing came to Song Qing and sat down, smiling and greeting Song Qing, "Song Tanhua, I haven't seen you for 3 months. Are the Crown Princess and Dao Tao Su all right?" After 3 months out of the palace, Su Qingqing missed them the most. If she had known that she would be so desperately being matched with blind dates when she returned home, she might as well have stayed in the palace for a few months. Song Qing originally wanted to say a few perfunctory words and leave, but he didn't expect to meet concubine Su here. No, it should be Su Qinjin. The Crown Princess is very good, and the Crown Prince and the little princess are also very good. As long as they are well, it's a pity that I can't enter the palace at will now, and I can't see them when I want to. Su Qingqing saw Song Qing and found that she missed them even more, because Song Qing could see the Crown Princess and the others every day. "By the way, I will buy some food later, and you can go to the palace tomorrow to serve them. The Crown Princess likes to eat tea cakes, meat pies, biscuits, etc., which are delicious when they are just out of the pot." Su Qingqing thought about it and suggested, "Before you go to the palace tomorrow, wait for me on the street, and I will buy fresh ones for you to bring to the palace." Song Qing nodded readily, "Okay." The Prime Minister looked at the two people in front of him talking happily, and his face suddenly sank. She actually seduced the future son-in-law in front of him. How can there be such a shameless woman in the world? The Prime Minister was about to remind Su Qingqing that this was a blind date between his daughter and Song Qing, when he heard Su Changfeng say, "Song Tanhua, you and my sister get along well. How about having dinner and drinking together tomorrow?" Su Changfeng had accompanied his sister on blind dates several times, but this was the first time he saw her getting along so well with a man. She was probably attracted to Song Tanhua. The Prime Minister asked in a deep voice, "Mr. Su, what do you mean by that?" Su Changfeng replied politely, "It means literally." Just when the Prime Minister was about to get angry, the door of the private room opened. The moment the door opened, everyone looked at the door and saw Prince Yu, and they were all stunned for a moment. Xiao Jinyu saw a room full of people and was stunned for a moment. If he hadn't seen the Prime Minister and Song Qing, he would have suspected that he had really walked into the wrong place. He came here on purpose to take advantage of the wrong door and ruin this blind date. Su Changfeng was the first to react and stepped forward to salute, "Prince Yu." The people in the private room also reacted and stood up to salute. "Prince Yu." Xiao Jinyu walked in boldly, waving his folding fan, and looked at the people in the private room again. Seeing two strange young women, it was not difficult to guess that they were the daughters of the Prime Minister. They were plain-looking and had plain figures. That's it. Is there any need for him to mess it up? People who have a little requirement for appearance are not looked down upon. Xiao Jinyu coughed lightly. "This prince has gone to the wrong place. What are you doing?" The Prime Minister was a little embarrassed to say that his daughter was on a blind date with Song Tanhua. Just when the Prime Minister hesitated for 2 seconds, Su Changfeng took over. "Prince Yu, the Prime Minister is arranging a blind date for his daughter, for fear that Song Tanhua would not look down on him, so he brought both daughters. If one fails, there is another one, but it's a pity." Everyone understood what he meant without saying the rest. The Prime Minister was so angry that his face was darker than the bottom of a pot, and it was difficult to say anything in front of Prince Yu. Xiao Jinyu naturally understood what Su Changfeng meant. He raised his folding fan, afraid that he would not be able to hold back his laughter. "Prime Minister, how is the match going?" The Prime Minister forced a faint smile. "No result yet." Oh, Xiao Jinyu nodded thoughtfully, and looked at Su Changfeng again. "Why is Mr. Su here?" The Prime Minister sneered in his heart when he heard this. He finally got the chance and rushed to answer, "Mr. Su is here with his sister for a blind date. It's normal for him to be anxious at his age." Su Changfeng rolled his eyes at the Prime Minister. At his age, he was not afraid of sticking his tongue out. Song Qing saw that the time was almost up, and took 2 steps forward. "Prince Yu, Prime Minister, I have something else to do, so I'll leave first." The Prime Minister wanted to keep Song Qing to discuss marriage, but Xiao Jinyu got there first. "You go back first, we'll have a drink together another day." Song Qing responded and left. The Prime Minister watched Song Qing leave, and the blind date that he had arranged with great difficulty was ruined. Xiao Jinyu saw that Song Qing had left, and there was no need for him to stay, so he left with a folding fan. Su Qing chased after him. "Prince Yu." Su Changfeng saw his sister chasing after Prince Yu, and a trace of doubt flashed in his eyes. No way, did she fall in love with Prince Yu again? He chased after her with doubt. In the private room, only the Prime Minister and his daughter were left, and he was so angry that his liver hurt. Xiao Jinyu found someone calling her, and turned around to see concubine Su. It was Princess Su. "What do you want to call me for?" Su Qing didn't beat around the bush. "I just miss the crown princess. Can you take them out to play?" "This is a bit difficult. If I take my sister-in-law out to play without permission, the crown prince will be angry." In fact, Xiao Jinyu also had this idea. The babies haven't come out to play yet, it's difficult. Su Qing was a little disappointed. "Okay, I just miss the crown princess." Xiao Jinyu thought for a while and said, "When the crown prince comes back, I guess he will take his sister-in-law out to play. Then, you can meet." Su Qing said, "It can only be like this." After Xiao Jinyu walked away, Su Changfeng came over. "Prince Yu is handsome and has a good figure. Although he has 2 concubines, he has no main wife. If you really like him, it would be nice to ask father to marry you and become the princess of Yu." Su Qing felt like she was struck by lightning after hearing this. She turned her head and glared at Su Changfeng. "Brother, what are you talking about? How can I like Prince Yu?" Su Changfeng thought his sister was embarrassed, and he smiled evilly. "You don't like him, but you are still chasing him? Do you still treat me as an outsider?" Su Changfeng is 1 year older than Su Qing, and they have a good relationship. Su Qingqing will tell Su Changfeng anything. Su Qingqing couldn't help but rolled her eyes at Su Changfeng. I just miss the crown princess. Prince, you and the crown princess have a good relationship? I just asked. Su Changfeng immediately reacted, I understand. You like Song Tanhua, right? Just now I saw you took the initiative to talk to him and you were very happy. Don't worry, sister, Song Tanhua is the future son-in-law of our Su family, my future brother-in-law. Su Qingqing. Where is your brain when you are talking back at someone? She took Su Changfeng's arm and said, I don't like him either. Su Changfeng was stunned, you don't like Tanhua either, then what kind do you like? It can't be like the crown prince, right? A man as talented and brilliant as the crown prince is really hard to find in this world. Su Qingqing said helplessly, at first I liked the crown prince. After all, he is the most beautiful man in Daxia. Who wouldn't be moved when he sees him? But I don't like him now. Su Changfeng knew the reason why his sister left the palace, that is, the crown prince didn't like his sister. Hearing his sister so disappointed, he thought she was sad. He comforted her, sister, no matter how handsome you are, it's useless. The best destination is a man who loves you like me. It's okay if you don't like the third place. Isn't there a second place? Although he is not as good looking as the third place, he is still okay. I will ask him out to meet him another day. Su Qingqing retorted, who said that being handsome is useless? That affects the appearance of the next generation. She pointed to her head and said, there is also IQ. You need to find a smart man. Su Changfeng was stunned for a moment, and didn't understand his sister's train of thought. The third place is both talented and beautiful, why don't you like it? Su Qingqing said, what's wrong with being talented and beautiful? There are more things to like. Su Changfeng. Just now you said that you need to be both talented and beautiful, but now you think that both talented and beautiful are not enough. Su Qingqing blinked her almond eyes and asked softly, brother, if I am so picky, will I really not be able to get married? Su Changfeng asked back, what do you think? Su Qingqing thought of Jun Wuxian. If she couldn't marry him in this life, how regretful would it be? It's too lonely to be alone. If the person you marry is not someone I like, you will regret it. Su Changfeng patted his sister's back in a soothing manner, sister, you have grown up. Su Qingqing said, then I'd better wait a little longer. She and Jun Wuxian haven't seen each other for more than half a year. If Jun Wuxian doesn't come to find her, then, find someone you like to marry, otherwise it will be too lonely to be alone. Let's go, brother will take you to eat delicious food. Su Changfeng took his sister to the pastry stall. Wang Ke reminded like a dog, master, isn't that Miss Su? I heard that she is going on a blind date with the newly promoted champion today. The prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading. Author, Gongzi Yun Si. Chapter 475. The person called the master is Mei Yisai, the eldest son of the Taiwei. His height is almost the same as that of Su Changfeng, and his appearance can be considered handsome. After being rejected on a blind date with Su Qingqing, she directly brought a matchmaker to her door to propose marriage, only to be rejected again. Mei Yisai looked at Su Qingqing's petite back, and an imperceptible gloom flashed in his eyes. At noon the next day, Su Qingqing came to the place she had agreed with Song Tanhua. She bought a lot of food. She wanted to buy all the desserts and snacks in the shops and send them to the palace. Song Qing looked at the big and small bags in front of him and didn't say anything. He just ordered his entourage to load the things into the carriage one by one. Please give me a message, saying that I miss them, and hope to have the opportunity to eat, drink and play together. Don't forget Tao Liangyuan and ask her to leave the palace as soon as possible. It's not good to be too old, Su Qingqing said at the end. Deliberately he emphasized his tone, and when Tao Liangyuan came out, she would have company. Ever since Su Qingqing came out of the palace, she no longer interacts with those daughters who she used to play well with, because they don't really regard her as friends. It's better for her not to have such friends. Song Qing said warmly, I will bring the message to you, please don't worry Su Qingjin. Su Qingqing smiled and thank you Song Tanhua. You're welcome, I'll leave first so as not to delay entering the palace Song Qing said and got on the carriage. Su Qingqing watched the carriage go further and further away, disappearing into the busy streets. It would be great if she could enter the palace every day. Su Qingjin. Su Qingqing turned around in confusion when she heard the sound, and saw Misi standing behind her. He was wearing a gorgeous brocade robe, holding a pure jade folding fan in his hand, and was dressed in luxury goods, for fear that others would not know how wealthy his family was. Misi was looking at Su Qingqing with a smile, that smile was very greasy. Misi was a well-known playboy, he wandered around flowers, indulged in eating meat and vegetables, and with a pretty face, he deceived many decent women. Before entering the palace, Misi beat her up because she almost forgot about this person after entering the palace. If she hadn't been arranged on a blind date a few days ago, she wouldn't have remembered that there was this person. Su Qingqing asked nonchalantly, is something wrong? Misi shook his folding fan, nothing, I want to ask Su Qingjin to have a drink together. Su Qingqing declined politely, I don't like drinking, you'd better find someone else. Misi paused in shaking the folding fan, and an imperceptible anger flashed in his eyes. My father and your father are colleagues after all, and we are well matched. Why is Su Qingjin so disrespectful? Master Mei also knows that my father and your father are colleagues, so why force me? You don't have to waste your time on me, I won't marry you. This time, Su Qingqing refused very simply, the purpose was to make Misi give up and stop being entangled with her. Mei Temple has never seen such a woman who refuses to give him face. She has been in the palace for several years. To put it nicely, she has a deep relationship with the prince and is like a brother and sister. She became a princess and left the palace in glory. She may have been tricked behind his back. Mei Teriko suppressed her anger and said, I just want to make friends with Su Qingjin. You will hurt my heart. I don't want a friend like you. I have something else to do, so I'll leave first. After Su Qingqing said this, she turned and left without looking back. Misi stood there and watched Su Qingqing's walking figure, put away the folding fan and held it tightly in the palm of his hand. Wang Ke said angrily, Master, Su Qingjin is so ignorant that she doesn't take the master seriously at all. She is not worthy of the master. Miyagi snorted coldly, of course she is not worthy of me. I want her to know the consequences of rejecting me. Wang Ke has been following his master for so many years, and he immediately understood what his master meant. He might be able to follow him and drink some broth. This was a good thing in the past. Asterisk. When Song Qing came to the East Palace with parcels of all sizes, Shen Chuwei was surprised. Mr. Song is so polite, he brought so many delicious food. Song Qing said warmly, this is what Su Qingjin asked the subordinate to bring to the crown princess. Shen Chuwei immediately guessed who it was, Su Qingqing. Song Qing, exactly. Shen Chuwei looked surprised, how did you meet her? You actually bought so much food. Song Qing said, I met her at the restaurant yesterday. Su Qingjin was very concerned about the crown princess, so she bought these things for me to take into the palace. Shen Chuwei looked at the pile of food, which were all her usual favorites, and was very moved for a moment. I miss her very much too. When His Highness comes back, I will ask His Highness to take me out of the palace so that we can meet her then. When Susu smelled the fragrance, she let go of Baihu's neck and ran all the way over. She grabbed the concubine's sleeve and shouted, Mom, I'm going to give you a cake. Okay, I'll get it for you now. Shen Chuwei looked at the meatloaf. Su Qingqing bought at least 20 meatloaf, which were still warm. She took out 2 and handed one to Susu and the other to Dao Tao. Dao Tao had already followed her sister when she ran over. Susu held the meat pie in one hand and stretched out the other hand. Mommy, mommy, I still want more nests. Shen Shuwei knew that her daughter was greedy, so she smiled and took out another one and handed it to her daughter. Okay, I'll give you another one. Susu took the meat pie, took it out of the oil paper bag, and handed it to Xiaobai's mouth, and Xiaobai opened his mouth and bit it. Shen Shuwei watched her daughter's behavior. Every time she had something to eat, she would get a portion for Xiaobai, especially meat. Xiaobai enjoys Susu's feeding very much. Susu saw Xiaobai eating, and stretched out her hand again. Mom, I still want the nest. Shen Chu smiled and took out another one for his daughter. Susu took the meat pie and ran out happily. Xiaobai followed behind while eating the meat pie. Shen Chuwei saw his daughter running out, and it was not difficult to guess that she was going to find Chu Lingfeng. Susu liked to play with Chu Lingfeng very much, mainly because Dao Tao loved studying too much and could not accompany Susu all the time. Susu came all the way to Chu Lingfeng's residence. When she saw Chu Lingfeng, she threw herself into his arms, raised her chubby little face, and raised the hot meat pie in her hand. Little pot, a good pie. Chu Lingfeng looked at Susu who came to feed him again, and a trace of imperceptible tenderness flashed in his eyes. Thank you, little princess. Susu took a bite of the meat pie, and the fragrance lingered on his lips and teeth. He smiled and said, good. Chu Lingfeng looked at the meat pie in his hand. He opened the oil paper package and the fragrance was immediately fragrant. He hadn't eaten meat pie for a long time. The hot meat pie made him want to eat it. He took a bite of the meat pie and chewed it slowly, and found that it tasted better than before. Tao Lianyuan happened to come today and brought a rose to Songqing, because Shen Shuwei said that roses represent passionate love. The rose was a seed given by Shen Shuwei. She only planted one. Today, it bloomed, so she picked it and wrapped it in cloth and brought it over. After she slowly walked into the study, she placed the rose in her hand on the desk in front of Songqing, and then turned and left. This was the case several times, just because she was afraid of causing trouble for Songqing. Tao Lianyuan, please stay. Songqing's gentle voice sounded behind him. Tao Lianyuan paused and her heartbeat suddenly accelerated. What did Songqing want to do when he called her? Or did he have something to say to himself? Tao Lianyuan turned to Songqing with excitement and asked in confusion, Mr. Song, is there something wrong? Songqing nodded, yes. Tao Lianyuan was happy at first, but then she felt a little disappointed. What if Songqing thought her behavior was not reserved and asked her not to do it in the future? Songqing stood up, picked up the package on the chair beside him and came to Tao Lianyuan. Tao Lianyuan looked at the package in Songqing's hand. Could it be that sincerity can make the stone open? Songqing started to send gifts back. Just as honey welled up in her heart, she heard Songqing say, this is what Su Qingjin asked me to bring to you. She misses you very much outside the palace. The smile on Tao Lianyuan's mouth froze. It was not sent by Songqing. Thinking of Su Qingjin, isn't it Su Qingqing? Then she smiled again, and the disappointment was replaced by excitement. I miss her too. I wonder how she is doing outside the palace, Tao Lianyuan said as she took the package. Songqing said, Su Qingjin is doing well outside the palace. She has something for me to tell you. Tao Lianyuan asked, what? Songqing told Tao Lianyuan exactly what Su Qingqing said. Su Qingjin said that if you want to leave the palace, you should leave as soon as possible. It's not good for you to get old. Tao Lianyuan was stunned when she heard this. How good would it be if the sentence was what Songqing really thought? However, it was not wrong if Su Qingqing said it. She should leave the palace earlier. I know. Thank you, Mr. Song. Song Ching, it's just a piece of cake. Asterisk. Lu Zaiyan spent 3 days to finally figure out the matter about the Crown Prince Xiao Jinyan, and rushed to the imperial study without stopping. The emperor waited for 3 days and became a little impatient, and then he heard Eunuch Li say, "Your Majesty, Lord Lu wants to see you. Good night, babies. Please support with monthly tickets and recommendation tickets. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading." Author, Gongzi Yun Si. Chapter 476. The emperor heard this and ordered, "Let him come in quickly." Hereafter Eunuch Li bowed and went out. Lu Zaiyan came in from the outside. Before Lu Zaiyan could salute, the emperor couldn't wait to ask, "Lu Iking, how is it going?" Lu Zaiyan stepped forward and bowed in salute. "Your Majesty, I have seen from the hexagrams that His Highness the Crown Prince is in danger now. I have been watching the stars night after night. There are no stars around the purple star. I can't tell yet whether it is bad or good. I still think it is the approximate location of His Royal Highness the Prince's current location." The emperor frowned when he heard this. "Does that mean the prince's life may be in danger at any time? Can't you be more specific?" Lu Zaiyan felt that he was already very powerful. He had calculated the general location and it was easier to find it. If he calculated it more specifically, he was not a god. "Your Majesty, I have limited abilities, so I can only count on this." The emperor also knew that Lu Zaiyan was good at observing the stars at night, and he had only a superficial understanding of fortune-telling. The most important thing now was to send people to Mobei to find the prince. "I will send people to Mobei now." Lu Zaiyan suggested, "Your Majesty, I suggest that the crown princess should also go with us." The emperor heard this and asked, "What's the use of a weak woman like the crown princess going to Mobei? Mobei is extremely dangerous and it's inappropriate." Lu Zaiyan explained, "Your Majesty, the crown princess is a blessed person and can ward off some disasters for your highness." In the past 3 days, Lu Zaiyan not only made a fortune for Xiao Jinyan, but also made a fortune for Shen Chuwei. Combining the astrology, he came to the conclusion that Xiao Jinyan still needed to rely on Shen Chuwei for his fortune. This was the first time the emperor heard that the crown princess had good fortune and could ward off disasters. He thought that the crown princess had given birth to twins, a boy and a girl, which was a good omen that could not be seen in a century. "You calculated this too?" Lu Zaiyan lowered his eyebrows and nodded, "Exactly. Originally, the prince's disappearance had been hidden from the princess. Now he not only had to tell the prince, but also asked the prince to go with him." The emperor told the queen about this. The queen looked confused. The crown princess is just a weak woman. What if she encounters danger when going to Mobei? Could it be that Lu Zaiyan made a mistake? The emperor said, "Lu Zaiyan will not say anything that he is not sure about easily. Since Lu Zaiyan said that the crown princess is a blessed person, there should be some basis for it. However, I am still a little worried. The crown princess is so delicate. When I went to visit Susu, I often asked her father where he was and when he would be back. It only takes a few days to go to Mobei. Tao Tao and Susu are inseparable from the crown princess. The queen will feel distressed when she thinks of Susu crying for mommy." The emperor paused after hearing this and said, "But it is related to the prince's safety. The prince still has to go to Mobei." The queen naturally knew how important the prince's safety was, but she was still worried about letting the prince go to Mobei. At this time, Hehuan Hall. Shen Chuwei ate the cake Su Qingqing bought and watched Susu sitting on Xiaobai. Xiaobai's body had grown a lot in the past 3 months and became a lot stronger. After practicing many times, Susu was finally able to sit firmly on Xiaobai's back. She grabbed Xiaobai's fur with her two little hands and shouted happily, "Drive!" Xiaobai is very docile in front of Susu. In order to prevent Susu from falling down, he walks very steadily. When the emperor and the queen came, they saw Susu on the tiger's back and were immediately frightened. From the time he raised Xiaobai, the emperor was worried, fearing that Xiaobai would hurt Susu. Xiaobai is a tiger, a wild beast, with a bloody nature, and is not easy to tame. The emperor strode over, picked up Susu on the tiger's back, and then pushed him back several steps. Susu raised her head and saw Grandpa Huang. She hugged Grandpa Huang's neck happily and said "Bhe" on his handsome face, "Grandpa." When the emperor saw Susu's healing smile, his worries seemed to be swept away, and he smiled heartily. "Susu, you can't sit on the back of a tiger, it's easy to fall." Susu said seriously, "Grandpa, who is very well behaved." Shen Shuwei saw the emperor and empress coming, and she hurriedly stepped forward to bless her body, father, the emperor, mother, the queen. The queen stepped forward and helped Shen Shuwei up, "Get up." The emperor said, "Go in and talk." After entering the house, the emperor and the queen were sitting on the throne. Susu hadn't seen Grandpa Huang for a long time, and she was currently in the emperor's arms. Chun 11 brewed 3 new cups of tea and placed them in front of the emperor, empress, and Shen Shuwei. Shen Shuwei was sitting on the chair. She was thirsty after eating the pastries just now. She took the teacup and brought it to her lips and blew on it, taking a few sips to quench her thirst. The queen and the emperor looked at each other, then looked at Shen Shuwei, and said in as calm a tone as possible, "Princess, I and the emperor are here today because they have something to tell you about the prince." When Shen Shuwei heard that it was about Xiao Jinyan, he stopped drinking tea and had a vague premonition in his heart. "What's wrong, Your Highness?" The prince fell off a cliff and disappeared. Before the queen finished speaking, there was a bang and the teacup in Shen Shuwei's hand broke into pieces. The tea splashed everywhere and was still steaming. The hot tea splashed on Shen Shuwei's instep, causing her to stand up in pain. Upon seeing this, the queen hurriedly stood up and supported Shen Shuwei. She saw that her embroidered shoes were soaked and said, "Come here, please call the imperial doctor." The imperial doctor who calls Chengzi. The injury that Dr. Wen showed him was already hot. After applying ointment, Dr. Wen withdrew. Shen Shuwei didn't care about the injury on his feet. He raised his head and looked at the queen, asking urgently, "Queen Mother, what happened to your highness? How did he fall off the cliff? Has he been found? No wonder I haven't written home for so long. It turns out something happened." The queen knew that she would be worried if she told Shen Shuwei, so she burned her feet just as she said it. How painful would it be to be so red? She comforted him, "We don't know the specific situation yet, but don't worry too much. Lu Iking has already figured it out. Although the prince is in danger now, he will be fine as long as he is found in time." When Shen Shuwei heard that she was in a dangerous situation, her heartbeat skipped a beat. Mr. Lu was a fortune teller in her heart, so if she was in a dangerous situation, it must be extremely dangerous. "My son is going to Mobei to find his highness." The queen was startled when she heard this, and she and the emperor looked at each other in surprise. When Shen Shuwei saw the silence of the emperor and the queen, she thought they would stop her. She said firmly, "Don't you, the emperor and the queen, let me go. I am worried about your highness. I must go to Mobei." The emperor said, "I am here this time to tell you that I want you to go to Mobei. Lu Iking said that you are a blessed person and can help the prince." Shen Shuwei breathed a sigh of relief when he heard that, as long as she was allowed to go, "My son, go pack your luggage." The queen held down Shen Shuwei who was getting up, "It will be too late to clean up later. The emperor will send another general to accompany him. We will discuss it further if necessary." Shen Shuwei couldn't wait to leave immediately, but now it was about Daxia's border defense, which was not a trivial matter, so she had to hold back her eagerness. "Then when will we set off?" The queen said, "The fastest thing is the day after tomorrow." When Shen Shuwei heard this, no wonder the queen said she couldn't wait until the day after tomorrow to set off. I don't know what happened to Xiao Jinyan at this time. After the emperor and empress left, Shen Shuwei kept packing her luggage. Chengzi felt a little distressed when she saw this. "Master, please rest for a while, and my servant will pack your luggage for you." Shen Chu slightly raised his head and looked at Chun 11. His eyes were red at some point, and his eyes were filled with crystal tears, as if they would burst in the next second. "Chengzi, will your highness be fine?" Chun 11 had been serving Shen Chuwei for several years, but how had she ever seen her master's eyes turn red? He didn't even cry when he was framed by Chang Liangyuan and imprisoned. Shen Chu blinked his beautiful eyes slightly, and tears streaked down his cheeks, falling down as if they were free of money. Chengzi panicked immediately and hurriedly took out a handkerchief and wiped the tears on her cheeks while comforting her. "Master, your highness will be fine." Shen Chuwei nodded vigorously, but the tears never stopped. "He promised to take me out of the palace to eat delicious food when he comes back. He can't keep his word." Susu was lying on the doorframe. Seeing her mother-in-law crying so sadly, she jumped into her mother-in-law's arms with her short legs, hugged her thighs, and started crying too. "Mom, don't cry." Shen Chuwei looked down at her precious daughter, saw her crying, and held her in her arms distressedly. "My concubine didn't cry, she just had sand in her eyes." Shen Chuwei didn't expect that one day the bad excuses in the TV series would be used by herself, but her daughter was crying so sadly, how could she let it go? Susu took out a small handkerchief from her bag, wiped the tears on her mother's cheek, and said with a choked voice, "Mom, don't cry." Seeing that her daughter was so sensible, Shen Chuwei felt that she was not sensible enough to cry anymore, so she suddenly stopped crying. Xiao Jinyan was just missing. Why was she crying? Those who didn't know thought she was crying. Miraculously, Susu suddenly stopped crying, hugged her mother's neck, and kissed her desperately. "Bachi, Bachi." Shen Chu touched her daughter's face slightly and said with a smile, "Susu is my sweet little cotton-padded jacket, but I have to go out for a while. You just stay in Hehuan Palace. You can live with Grandma Huang if you want." Susu didn't quite understand what her mother said. She just felt that her mother was leaving her. She immediately hugged her neck and said, "Mom, hold the baby." Shen Chuwei hugged her daughter tightly and raised her head to look at Chengzi. "Just pack some clothes for daily wear, and then pack up the few sets of men's clothes that His Highness gave me." My slave knows. Chengzi stood up and went to the closet, opened the door and took out the clothes one by one. Shen Chuwei walked out with her daughter in her arms and saw Xiao Jinyu walking in. "Sister-in-law, why are you crying? Who bullied you?" Xiao Jinyu felt a little aggrieved when he saw Shen Chuwei's eyes were red, obviously crying. Shen Chu shook his head slightly. "It's okay, I'm just worried about His Highness." Xiao Jinyu asked, "What's wrong with brother prince?" Shen Chuwei thought that Xiao Jinyu knew about Xiao Jinyan falling off the cliff and missing. Now judging from Xiao Jinyu's reaction, he shouldn't know. Xiao Jinyu couldn't help but feel a little anxious. "Tell me, what's wrong with the prince brother?" Shen Chuwei hesitated a little. "His Highness has something happened to him in Mobei. During the time I am in Mobei, you should stay with Susu more. Good evening, babies." Asking for monthly votes and recommendations. The prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading. Author, Gongzi Iyun Si. Chapter 477. Susu is still young and likes to eat and play. If she were not in the palace, Susu would definitely miss her. "Sister-in-law, are you going to Mobei alone? It's so dangerous." Xiao Jinyu looked at Susu in Shen Chuwei's arms. Susu was still young and didn't understand the meaning of Shen Shui's words, and was looking at him with beautiful eyes. Xiao Huang. Xiao Jinyu. When can I learn to call him Uncle Emperor? Shen Chu shook his head slightly. No, my father will arrange for the general to go with him. Xiao Jinyu had always wanted to go to the battlefield and kill the enemy like the prince brother. Since he had no chance, he felt that this was an opportunity. I'll go with my sister-in-law. I'm going to find my father now. After Xiao Jinyu finished speaking, he strode away. Shen Shui looked at Xiao Jinyu's leaving figure and sighed, "What are you going to do?" "Mom, Xiao Huang doesn't even hold the baby," Susu said aggrievedly. Shen Shui looked down at her daughter and saw the aggrieved look on her face. She explained, "He is the little emperor's uncle. It's not that he doesn't hold the baby, it's because he has something to do." Susu tilted her head and shouted, "Xiao Huangsu." Shen Shui knew that her daughter's pronunciation was not accurate enough, so she explained, "It's Uncle Xiao Huang, so he can't be called Xiao Huang." Susu patted her chest and said, "Baby knows, it's Xiao Huangsu." Shen Shui. You can just call it egg yolk cake. Xiao Jinyu went straight to the imperial study room. It was a coincidence that he came at the time. The ministers had just finished discussing the matter and the ministers were coming out of the imperial study room one after another. Seeing Xiao Jinyu, they all stepped forward to salute. Xiao Jinyu waved his hand and strode into the imperial study room. "Father, I would like to accompany the crown princess to Mobei." The emperor rubbed his forehead, and his head hurt even more when he heard this sentence. The little bastard knows how to stir up trouble. Xiao Jinyu retorted dissatisfied, "Father, how do you evaluate your son like this? If my son is a bastard, who are you?" The emperor's eyes widened in anger, and he slapped the table angrily, "Is it against you?" Xiao Jinyu secretly swallowed his saliva and said in a weaker voice, "Father, I'm here to talk about business. If something happens to the prince's brother, you won't tell me. I've been practicing riding and shooting hard every day, and now is the time to put it to use." At the end of the sentence, his tone couldn't help but get a little higher. The emperor said angrily, "Shut up." Xiao Jinyu shouted in a coquettish tone, "Father." The emperor softened his tone and said, "Just stay in the palace obediently. You don't need to worry about these things." Xiao Jinyu said, "I don't want to worry about it, but the life or death of the prince's brother is uncertain. How can I, as my younger brother, stand by and watch?" The emperor was startled when he heard this. "You think you can go to the battlefield just by being able to mount a horse and shoot twice? Do you think you can go to the battlefield after hunting a few prey in Kiowa? This is not enough." Xiao Jinyu frowned and said, "Of course I know that these are not enough, so I went to the battlefield to help the prince brother." "Emperor." Xiao Jinyu called out coquettishly again, "Father." The emperor said earnestly, "The battlefield is dangerous. You are different from the prince. You have been pampered since childhood. You do not know as much as the prince, and you are not as good at strategy. How can I let you go to the battlefield? I don't mean that you are not good enough. These are all you need: experience accumulated through experience. How can you go to the battlefield if you don't even go to court in the morning and don't care about your own territory? If your mother knew about it, she would definitely be angry." The last sentence is the key point. He finally eased his relationship with the queen. If Yuer was allowed to go to the battlefield, he might not even be able to enter the gate of Fenji Palace. "My son, go find your mother." After Xiao Jinyu said that, he ran out without looking back. The emperor looked at his son and sighed helplessly. When the queen learned that her youngest son was going to Mobei, she refused directly, "No, you can't go." Xiao Jinyu hugged his mother's shoulders and said coquettishly, "Empress, I have been spoiled since childhood and have never done anything well. This is a good opportunity. I will not let my mother down." The queen looked at her youngest son, who was 1 step taller than herself. She watched him grow up little by little with her own eyes. She was reluctant to let him suffer at all, so how could she be willing to let him go to the battlefield? The Queen Mother is scared. The prince has already gone to the battlefield and we can't let you go anymore. If something happens to you, how will the Queen Mother survive? As soon as Xiao Jinyu heard this, he knew that the Queen Mother was shaken. He continued, "Mother, I know that the Queen loves my son, but the prince brother is suffering. I, the younger brother, cannot stay out of it. Mother, don't worry, I will wait for my son and the prince brother to come back together." Seeing that her son had decided to leave, the queen suddenly asked, "Are you willing to let go of your wife?" Xiao Jinyu was stunned when he heard this. He was going to Mobei for only a few days and he would definitely not be able to leave his wife. But didn't the prince's brother and sister-in-law also separate? That year, the prince's brother and sister-in-law were separated for half a year. It was not long, but it was not short. He could now vaguely understand how the prince's brother endured the pain of lovesickness. "It's not like I won't come back. If I'm lucky, maybe my wife will also be happy," Xiao Jinyu said with a smile. The queen sighed helplessly, "You has grown up after all. The Queen Mother only hopes that you can be safe, and does not expect you to be outstanding." Xiao Jinyu said, "I understand the mother's worries and I will definitely make a triumphant return." The queen did not try to dissuade her, "My mother believes in you." Xiao Jinyu was a little moved. He looked at his mother, struggled for a long time, and finally asked, "Mother, I have always wanted to ask you something. Was it you who suggested that your brother be the hostage on my behalf?" The queen's face changed when she heard this. "Who told you?" Xiao Jinyu saw that his mother's face looked a little strange, and he had a vague answer in his heart. "The old people in the palace said it." "Mother, is this true?" he couldn't help asking again. The queen said helplessly, "It happened many years ago, why are you still entangled in this issue?" Xiao Jinyu said all the doubts in his heart for so many years, which was also what he had always wanted to ask. Since the prince came back from Nanzhao Kingdom, mother has always been alienated from the prince. He is obviously your son, why do you always speak coldly to him? It's all in the past, don't mention it again. The queen obviously didn't want to mention the old things. Xiao Jinyu didn't continue to ask, because he planned to ask again when he came back. "Mother, when the prince comes back this time, can you celebrate his birthday for him?" Xiao Jinyu has always been curious about the prince's birthday, but no one told him, and the prince didn't say it either. He learned this from Lu 11 last year. Every year on his birthday, his mother celebrated it for him, but the prince was watching from the side. He couldn't imagine how the prince felt at that time. The queen was stunned when she heard this. The queen agreed to let Xiao Jinyu go to the battlefield, and the emperor didn't say anything else. General Su went to Mobei together. Xiao Jinyu returned to Qiancheng Hall. As soon as he entered the room, he hugged his wife and buried his head in her neck. His voice was full of reluctance. "Ian." Miss Han looked down at Xiao Jinyu and asked in confusion, "What's wrong?" Xiao Jinyu said, "I'm going to Mobei. You should stay in the palace and don't stay at home all the time. Go and play with Susu. I promise you will be in a good mood all day." Miss Han frowned, "Why do you suddenly want to go to Mobei? Why don't you discuss it with me?" Xiao Jinyu explained, "I just learned today that the prince brother had an accident in Mobei, and my sister-in-law is going to Mobei. As the prince brother's younger brother, I naturally have to help the prince brother. Because the incident happened suddenly, I didn't have time to discuss it with you. I know that Ian will definitely support me to do this." Miss Han. Xiao Jinyu coaxed, "Ian, don't be angry, I promise quick victory, come back and reunite with you as soon as possible." Miss Han looked at Xiao Jinyu coldly, "Have you ever thought of taking me with you?" Xiao Jinyu lowered his head and kissed her lips, Mobaby is too dangerous, how can I bear to let you suffer with me? I can only feel at ease when you are in the palace. Miss Han snorted coldly, quibbling. Xiao Jinyu grabbed her wrist and threw her on the bed. Ian, I really can't bear to leave you. If I go out to play, I will definitely take you, but fighting in battle is different from playing, I can't take you. Miss Han looked at him steadily. Don't believe it? I will make you believe it, Xiao Jinyu said and lowered his head to kiss her, wanting to use practical actions to tell her how reluctant he was. Miss Han uttered a sentence after a long time. Xiao Jinyu, you have learned bad things. Xiao Jinyu looked at the clothes that were usually cold and lonely, and now his face was flushed and his breath was unstable, so he couldn't stop. Ian, I will leave for Mobaby the day after tomorrow. I will really miss you. Miss Han. Asterisk. The day before departure, Shen Shuwei asked Chengzi to pick all the corn in the small vegetable garden, as well as sweet potatoes, salted fish, etc. Good night. Ask for monthly tickets and recommendation tickets on Monday. The prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading. Author, Gongzi Yun Si. Chapter 478. Chapter 478. Finally I realized how fragile my body is. Susu can't find her mother. The corn was fresh, so she wrapped them one by one with plastic wrap and put them in the fresh keeping storage room in the space. The sweet potatoes were planted last year. In the afternoon, Xiao Gaiza took them out from the cellar, packed them in bags and put them in the space. Thinking that Xiao Jinyan liked to eat meat, fried eggplant, ants climbing trees, and steamed dumplings, she went to the vegetable garden to pick hundreds of eggplants. She also picked 10 kilograms of peppers. It didn't take long for her to pick almost all the vegetables in the vegetable garden. But fortunately, the vegetable garden in Xiaoxiang Pavilion was expanded, enough for Chengzi and the babies to eat. The next morning, Shen Shuwei put on the red men's suit and tied a high ponytail. Chengzi drew 2 petals on Shen Chu's forehead. Even if it was men's clothes, she wanted her master to be beautiful. Although Shen Shuwei is the mother of 2 children, her delicate little face looks like a teenager of about 15 years old, and it doesn't look abrupt to paint flowers on her face. It was popular for the young men of the Xia dynasty to paint water drop-shaped flowers when they were young, just like it was popular for men in a certain dynasty to wear flowers in their hair. So Shen Shuwei did not stop Chengzi from painting 2 petals. Shen Shuwei dressed neatly and went to the room of the babies. Looking at her sleeping son and daughter, she was reluctant to leave, but Xiao Jinyan was right. No matter how reluctant they were, they would eventually have their own families, and they would be the ones who would stay together for a lifetime. Dao Tao and Susu were spoiled by the emperor and the queen, so she felt more at ease. Goodbye, babies, your mother will bring your father back safely. Shen Shuwei bowed her head and kissed her son and daughter on the forehead, and then she went out with Suichuan. Qin Xiao took out the gift early in the morning. Because the journey was long, General Su and Xiao Jinyu chose to ride horses, but prepared a carriage for Shen Shuwei. The emperor and the queen came to see her off in person. Xiao Jinyu's 2 concubines also came to see him off. Xiao Jinyu was reluctant to leave his wife, and now that he saw his wife coming to see him off, he wanted to take her with him to Mobaby. Ian, I'm leaving. You've lost a lot of weight recently. There are many old hens in my sister-in-law's chicken coop, which are the best for nourishing the body. Ask someone to catch some and stew ginseng for them. Miss Han nodded. I've made a note. The hens in the Crown Princess's hens are indeed more delicious. What Xiao Jinyu didn't know was that the chickens and ducks in the chicken coop were fed with spiritual spring water, and the meat was more tender and delicious. People who eat chickens and ducks fed with spiritual spring water can also eliminate a small amount of toxins from the body. Wang Xin stood aside, looking at the 2 people in front of her who looked like a loving couple, but didn't notice that she was still a concubine. Miss Han grabbed Xiao Jinyu's hand, with a hint of reluctance in her eyes. remember to come back early. Xiao Jinyu chuckled, don't worry, my lovely wife is waiting for me at home, I can't bear to stay outside for long. Miss Han, you are so funny. Xiao Jinyu smiled and didn't care. When she turned around and left, Wang Xin hurriedly took 2 steps forward and grabbed Xiao Jinyu's sleeve, Your Highness. Xiao Jinyu stopped and knew it was not his wife when he heard the voice. A Yan's voice was not so soft. He turned around in confusion and saw Wang Xin. He always felt guilty about Wang Xin because he married her and she had been alone in the empty room. Is there anything? Wang Xin took out the ping and fu from her arms and handed it to Xiao Jinyu. Her tone was gentle and a little reluctant. This is the first time that the prince goes to the battlefield. Although I have never been to the battlefield, I know that the battlefield is extremely dangerous. I am very worried about the prince, so I embroidered a peace charm for the prince overnight to pray for his safe return. Xiao Jinyu lowered his head to the peace charm in front of him. It was sewn with red cloth, and the 3 words peace charm were embroidered with gold thread. Even though he didn't know needlework, he could see that the words were embroidered very well. He took the peace charm from her hand and said, Thank you. Such 2 polite words made Wang Xin stunned for a moment. She held the handkerchief in her hand tightly and said with a smile, Why is the prince still saying thank you to me? This is what I should do. It is my greatest wish for the prince to return safely. Xiao Jinyu said, It's rare that you are so thoughtful. When I come back, I will promise you. Wang Xin was a little excited when she heard this. The prince finally saw her sincerity and wanted her to be a legitimate concubine? Xiao Jinyu looked at Wang Xin and continued, You can return to the Empress Dowager and choose another good man. Wang Xin was stunned, as if she didn't believe that Xiao Jinyu would say this. After Xiao Jinyu finished speaking, he turned and walked towards his mother, leaving Wang Xin still in a daze. The queen took Shen Shuwei's hand and gave her many instructions. Crown Princess, be more careful when you go out. People are treacherous. You are so beautiful that it is easy for people with ulterior motives to target you. You need to be protected by someone at all times, understand? Shen Shuwei nodded vigorously, Mother, I remember, am I not wearing men's clothes? The chance of meeting a pervert will be very low. The queen said again, It's always better to be careful. Don't go to dangerous places. Shen Shuwei said, I will remember your mother's teachings. This was Xiao Jinyu's first time going far away, and the queen was not only worried but also reluctant to let her go. 1,000 words cannot relieve the mother's worry when her son travels 1,000 miles away. Xiao Jinyu stepped forward and saluted, Father, Mother, I am leaving. The queen said, Don't worry too much. Don't be impulsive. Do you understand? Xiao Jinyu said, I am familiar with the art of war and can recite it by heart. Don't worry, Mother. When the prince asked him to copy the art of war, he copied it many times and couldn't forget it even if he wanted to. The emperor coughed lightly, It's getting late, it's time to set off. After Shen Shuwei and Xiao Jinyu paid their respects to the emperor, they turned around and walked out of the palace gate. Qin Xiao opened the carriage curtain and said, Princess, please get in the carriage. Shen Chu slightly glanced at Xiao Jinyu and General Su, who all sat on the tall horses. She felt a little disgusted when she saw the carriage again. It's too slow to ride in a carriage. Please bring me a horse. Qin Xiao reminded, Princess, you are delicate and have a long journey, so you are not suitable for riding a horse. Shen Shuwei was eager to save her husband. She stepped on her toes, straightened her chest, raised her chin and said, Who said I'm weak? Go and bring me a horse. Qin Xiao looked at Shen Shuwei's slender body. Even wearing men's clothes could not hide her fragility, and he hesitated. Shen Chu waved his hand slightly, go quickly, you can't delay me in finding His Highness. Qin Xiao paused after hearing this, then turned around and went to the stable to bring a tall horse over, not forgetting to remind him. Princess, Please be careful. Shen Shuwei put the snowball on the horse's back, then grabbed the saddle feet and stepped on the stirrups to get on the horse. In order to carry the snowball more easily, she specially asked Changzi to make a crossbody bag. After sitting firmly, she put Swichuan into her pocket. Swichuan, stay inside obediently, and I will take you to find His Highness. Miao Xuetuan's blue eyes stared at Shen Shuwei without blinking. He had never left Dao Tao and Susu Xuetuan, and he was very reluctant to let them go. I'll be back soon. The most important thing now is to find His Highness. After Shen Shuwei said that, she pressed the snowball into the cloth bag. The cloth bag is very breathable and is not afraid of holding it in. Then he took the reins from Qin Xiao's hand, clamped the horse's belly and followed Xiao Jinyu's horse. Qin Xiao quickly mounted his horse and followed Shen Shuwei slowly. His purpose was to protect Shen Shuwei, so he followed him to Mobei. After leaving the city, the group started galloping on their horses. It was Shen Shuwei's first time riding a horse and running wildly. He was a little excited and kept waving the whip in his hand. After running for a long time, while taking a break for lunch, Shen Shu slightly realized what Qin Xiao said about his body being delicate and not suitable for riding horses. The skin on her inner thighs had begun to break after constant friction, and she frowned in pain. No matter where Shen Shuwei was, if no one pampered her, she would pamper herself and not let herself suffer. What's more, after being pampered by Xiao Jinyan in the past few years, his body is even more fragile and jealous. How can he withstand the torment of riding a horse for half a day? Shen Shuwei regretted not putting a layer of padding on the saddle. The skin was so worn that it wouldn't last for 2 or 3 days. Qin Xiao pulled the reins, helped Shen Shuwei dismount, and then tied the horse to a stake outside the inn. When he turned around, he saw the crown princess's strange walking posture, and he quickly guessed what caused it. He strode forward and stretched out his arms. Princess. Shen Shuwei saw Qin Xiao's arm, reached out and grabbed his arm and sighed deeply. Qin Xiao, you'd better buy a carriage. Qin Xiao, I understand. Xiao Jinyu saw that Shen Shuwei was walking in a strange way, and he stepped forward in confusion and asked, Sister-in-law, what's wrong with you? Shen Shu sighed slightly and answered concisely, my legs hurt. Xiao Jinyu understood immediately and took Shen Shuwei from Qin Xiao's hand. Let's go in and have a rest first. Shen Shuwei told Qin Xiao, get a room. I want to take a shower and apply some ointment. Qin Xiao took the order to open a room, and then asked the waiter to prepare hot water. Shen Shuwei originally wanted to take a shower and apply ointment first, but after seeing the waiter bringing the food to the table one after another, she changed her mind and wanted to eat first and then take a shower and apply ointment. Inside the palace, Dao Tao and Susu got up early to have breakfast. When they didn't see their mother and concubine, they ran into the room and planned to wake up their mother and concubine for breakfast. When the 2 little guys ran into the room and saw the empty bed, their big eyes were full of doubts. Changzi didn't have time to turn around. When she returned to the restaurant, she found that her mistresses were gone. She probably guessed that they were looking for her mistress. Just as she was about to turn around and go in, she saw Dao Tao and Susu running out one after another. Young masters, please have your meal first. After you have finished your meal, I will take you to pay your respects to the queen. Susu threw herself into her arms, hugged her thighs, and asked in a sweet voice, Auntie, where did mommy go? Changzi coaxed in a gentle voice, your mother-in-law has gone to find your father, and she will be back soon. Young masters, can you please have your meal first? Dao Tao and Susu nodded obediently after hearing this. Mama and father will come back later and have a meal together. The 2 little guys climbed onto the chairs neatly and began to eat on their own. Changzi looked at the 2 young masters and didn't know how to explain that His Highness and the master would not be able to come back for a while. After breakfast, Changzi took them to Fenji Palace. Chang Liangyuan only learned today that Shen Chuwei had gone to Mobei to find Xiao Jinyan. What made her angry was that her aunt not only did not tell her that Xiao Jinyan was in trouble, but also did not let her go to find Xiao Jinyan. She was about to go to Fenji Palace to check things out, when she saw Chengzi entering Fenji Palace with the emperor's grandson and the young princess. Shen Chuwei is not around now, which is a good opportunity. Susu let go of Chengzi's hand and threw herself into Grandma Wang's arms. Nana, Nana. Ever since the crown princess and Xiao Jinyu left, the queen had been on tenterhooks and had no intention of eating, but when she saw Dao Tao and Susu, she shifted her attention. Baby, have you had breakfast? Susu said in a milky voice, that's it, milk bag. Dao Tao added, Nana, the second best is the custard bun. Good evening, babies. Please support us with monthly tickets and recommendation tickets. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading. Author, Gongzi Iyun Si. Chapter 479. The queen had the honor to eat custard buns, which were a bit sweet and fragrant with milk. They were much more delicious than ordinary steamed buns. Is it tasty? Susu nodded vigorously. Baby loves secondary milk buns the most. Not to be outdone, Dao Tao replied, Nana, wo yusai. The queen smiled as she looked at her precious grandson and granddaughter. She was really grateful to Shen Chuwei for giving birth to a pair of twin grandsons, which added a lot of fun to her otherwise dull life. Qingying, bring out the pastries and give them to the babies to try. Here Qingying responded and went to prepare the pastries. Not only the queen likes this pair of twins, Qingying also likes them very much. Every time she sees their cute appearance, she smiles from the bottom of her heart. When Chang Liangyuan came in, she saw such a warm scene, and saw her aunt smiling like this at them. In the past, her aunt always smiled at her like this. But over the past 2 years, her aunt has become more and more indifferent to her. She used to hold her hand and care about her, but now she doesn't care about her life or death at all. Chang Liangyuan clenched her handkerchief and walked in slowly, breaking the warmth of the room and saying, Auntie. The queen raised her head and saw Chang Liangyuan. Her smile immediately faded. You're here. Chang Liangyuan took a few steps forward and said softly, Aunt, I heard that King Yu and the crown princess went to Mobei. Lanner worried my aunt, so she came to stay with you. Lanner is interested, but my mood immediately improved when I saw them. The queen looked at the 2 little guys sitting on the chairs, eating the pastries brought by Qingying, and the smile appeared on her face again. Chang Liangyuan's face looked a little ugly when she heard this. Seeing her aunt's love for them, it could be said that they were treasures in the palm of her hand. Because of Shen Chuwei, Xiao Jinyan was left out in the cold. Because of these twins, even her aunt, who had always loved her, ignored her. Without them, the princess would be hers, and her aunt would only love her child. The jealousy in Chang Liangyuan's eyes became more and more intense. Without them, everything would be hers. The queen raised her head and saw Chang Liangyuan still standing, and said, Don't just stand, sit down and eat some cakes together. Yes, Aunt Chang Liangyuan clenched her handkerchief and sat down next to the queen. She looked at the 2 little kids opposite eating and felt unhappy from the bottom of her heart. She smiled and said to the queen, Auntie, Dao Tao and Susu are so cute. I hope I can give birth to such cute children in the future. Both the words and the words reminded the queen that she could also have children, and Shen Chuwei was not the only one who could. The queen paused after hearing the words and raised her head to look at Chang Liangyuan. She saw her staring at Dao Tao and Susu with a smile on her face. No matter who saw such cute and sensible children as Dao Tao and Susu, they would be involuntarily fall in love with them. If she were younger, she would also like to have a daughter as cute as Susu. Susu was nibbling the pastry in her hand, and found that Grandma Huang was looking at her but not eating. She stretched out her little hand and grabbed a piece of pastry and raised it in front of Grandma Huang. "Nana, ni cake." "Thank you, baby." The queen happily took the pastry from her hand and put it to her mouth and took a bite. She found that it was sweeter than usual. Susu asked seriously, "Nana, are you feeling better?" The queen smiled and replied, "It's delicious." With a smile on her face, she pointed at the cakes on the plate and said, "I'll give it to Grandpa again." The queen smiled and nodded in agreement. Susu was really kind to the dog emperor. It's no wonder that Susu always thinks of Grandpa Huang, because Grandpa Huang is so kind to Susu that he has never been cruel to Susu from birth to now. He always talks to Susu with a smile. Dao Tao finished the cake in her hand, wiped her fingers carefully with a handkerchief, and couldn't help but ask, "Nana, when will the queen come back?" The queen chewed for a moment, and then replied with a smile, "You will come back as soon as you find your father." After Susu finished eating, she put her hand into the plate and took another piece to continue eating. "Will father be back soon?" The queen nodded vigorously. "Well, I'll be back soon." Dao Tao and Susu laughed happily after hearing this, because they had not seen their father for a long time. Chang Liangyuan, who was left out, watched her aunt talking and laughing with the two little kids as if she didn't exist. Just now she reminded her aunt specifically that she wanted to have children, but her aunt ignored her. He didn't trust her at all. After eating the pastries, Dao Tao wanted to go back to study, so Susu took Xiaobai to find Grandpa Huang. When Chang Liangyuan saw the two troublemakers leaving, it seemed as if all eyes from around her were on her. "Auntie, what are the princess doing in Mobei?" The queen did not hide anything from her niece. She spoke slowly. "The prince had an accident, and the princess went to find him." Chang Liangyuan asked, "Aunt, what happened to your highness?" The queen sighed, "The prince fell off the cliff and disappeared. No one has found him yet. I hope the prince and the others can come back soon." Only then did Chang Liangyuan find out that Xiao Jinyan fell off a cliff and disappeared. Did he fall off a cliff and disappear? I'm afraid it's more bad than good, right? She hasn't become the crown princess yet. How could anything happen to Xiao Jinyan? If something happens to him, how can she still be the princess? The queen stared at her niece for a long time. She was only 16 when she first entered the East Palace, but now she is 20. If the prince never allowed her to sleep with her, staying in the East Palace would be just a waste of time. Lanner, the crown prince only has the crown princess in his heart. I'm afraid that you will continue to stay in the East Palace and waste your youth. It's better to leave the palace now and find a well-matched person to marry. Chang Liangyuan was still immersed in whether Xiao Jinyan would come back wrapped up, when she heard her aunt's words and was stunned on the spot. She came to the East Palace for the sake of the crown princess. Now that she has entered the East Palace, there is no chance, so she is actually allowed to leave the palace. How could she be willing to do this? Auntie, Lanner has always been in love with His Highness before entering the East Palace. Now you let Lanner leave the palace. How can Lanner be willing to accept this? Chang Liangyuan cried as she spoke. The queen felt a little soft when she saw Chang Liangyuan crying. Who doesn't want to marry the one she loves? But one-sided love will only hurt yourself. She continued to persuade, I am also doing this for your own good. I don't want you to waste your time. As you get older, it will be difficult for you to get married when you leave the palace in the future. Chang Liangyuan cried even more aggrievedly. She raised her handkerchief and wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes. Auntie, Lanner is unwilling to give in. Can you help Lanner? The queen said helplessly, how can I help you? If the prince doesn't want to, I can't do anything to him. Chang Liangyuan lowered her eyes and wiped her tears, and snorted coldly in her heart. It was not that she had no choice but to protect Shen Shuwei, an outsider, and not to help her niece. The queen gently advised, "Go back and think carefully. I will not harm you." Chang Liangyuan just lowered her head and cried without speaking. The queen felt very distressed when she saw him, and comforted him for a long time. After leaving Fenji Palace, Chang Liangyuan's expression changed immediately. She could tell that the queen didn't care about her niece at all. "Do you want her to leave the palace to make room for Shen Shuwei?" She refused to leave the palace, and Shen Shuwei's leaving the palace this time was a good opportunity to get rid of her. After Chang Liangyuan returned, she wrote a letter and asked Hui Xiang to send it. "Let the elder brother find some killers to kidnap and kill Shen Shuwei on the way so that she will never come back." After the letter was sent, Chang Liangyuan calmly waited for the news. It rained yesterday and the weather became cooler. Chang Liangyuan saw Susu when she was walking in the garden, and she saw the inseparable white tiger, but she never had the chance to take action. As long as someone approaches, the white tiger will show a posture that is about to eat people. How can ordinary people dare to approach? Seeing Susu playing carefree, Chang Liangyuan gritted her teeth, but there was nothing she could do. Asterisk. Regarding Su Qingqing's 25th blind date, she gave up all the drama, and the scenes became more and more bizarre. A plot that she thought could only be found in storybooks actually happened to her. For example, Mr. He is the son of a wealthy businessman, the second generation of rich people, and his family is rich. It can be said that Su Qingqing is much gentler than before entering the palace. At least she can have a few sips of tea with her quietly. Mr. He looked Su Qingqing up and down. Su Qingqing almost spit out that lewd smile. Young Master Ji asked, "Su Qingjin, I like your appearance very much, but I have a question that I am a little confused about. I wonder if Su Qingjin can answer it." "Master He, didn't you ask knowingly? If I go to bed, can I still leave the palace?" "If I go to bed, you may not have a chance to see me." After Su Qingqing finished speaking, she slapped the table and left. What Su Qingqing said was absolutely correct. The person who served as the prince's bedchamber was, how could he, a rich second generation, get his hands on him? Living in the palace for a long time, naturally you can't see each other. Another example is a certain Lu Gongzi, a second generation official. His sister entered the palace and became Jiu, and she was also from a famous family. Mr. Lu took a sip of tea and began to ask, "Su Qingjin, you have been in the palace for so long and the prince has not touched you. Do you have some disease? For example, do you have any ugly birthmarks on your body? Or?" Su Qingqing almost spit out the hot tea. No matter how good-tempered she was, she couldn't bear it now. Before Mr. Lu could finish speaking, she immediately splashed the hot tea in Mr. Liu's face. "You are the only one who is sick. Your whole family is sick. I am a beautiful girl with beautiful face and skin like snow. A toad wants to eat swan meat, but it doesn't care about your own virtue." After Su Qingqing finished scolding, she felt it was not enough to relieve her anger, so she went up and punched Mr. Lu, then clapped her hands, turned around and left. Having seen a lot of weird things, Su Qingqing instinctively rejected the idea of a blind date. Today, Su Changfeng introduced his younger sister to the handsome young master again, but he just pushed his sister's boudoir away and found that the building was already empty. "My sister ran away." At this time, in the busy street, Su Qingqing succeeded in sneaking away and was walking around happily. Caixia was a little worried. "Miss, if we run out like this, the young master will definitely be worried. Maybe the young master can introduce a reliable man this time." "A reliable man?" Su Qingqing snorted. "How many times have you been tricked? I won't believe in their eyes anymore. Anyway, I would rather die than go on a blind date." Su Qingqing saw a clothes shop not far away and happily ran over with Caixia. "Let's go buy new clothes." "Miss, how many new clothes have you bought?" "There is no room in the wardrobe, and you haven't worn them yet," Caixia said. Su Ching said seriously, you don't understand, a woman's wardrobe is always missing one piece of clothing, and that is the latest style. Caixia, I have little knowledge. I really have never heard of this sentence. I just heard about it. Su Ching happily walked into the clothes shop. Caixia followed helplessly and walked in. Miazi noticed Su Ching when she was walking around. Every time he saw her, he felt itchy and wanted her to know that she regretted agreeing to his marriage proposal. Are you ready? Master, don't worry, everything has been arranged. I guarantee that this time I can make my wish come true. Wang Ke had a bad smile on his face, and he also wanted to drink a cup of broth. Good night, babies. Please give me monthly votes and recommendation votes. The prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading. Author, Gongzi Yun Si. Chapter 480. Su Ching walked around the store and fell in love with a blue silk skirt, which was the latest model in the store. Su Ching was also an old customer. The store owner knew that she was the legitimate daughter of General Su and a wealthy person, so he tried his best to promote this new skirt. Ms. Su, this skirt is very suitable for you, the store owner said with a smile. Su Ching really liked it. Just as she was about to ask the owner to pack it, a flattering female voice came from behind. Ching, I haven't seen you for a long time. Su Ching turned around and saw the woman in light green clothes, her best friend Zhang Yin'er, who played very well before entering the palace. Originally, the two of them had no intersection because of their identities. Zhang Yin'er used to embroider some handkerchiefs and sachets to sell on the street. Su Ching took a fancy to the handkerchiefs she embroidered, and they got to know each other after a few visits. Zhang Yin'er had a set of skills to coax people, and often made Su Ching very happy. Su Ching was always generous to her friends. Whatever Zhang Yin'er liked, Su Ching would buy it for her as long as she had enough money. Zhang Yin'er came over with a flattering smile and took Su King's hand. Ching, I find you are getting more and more beautiful. Su Ching looked Zhang Yin'er up and down. She used to be much thinner than herself, but now she looked plumper in a tight-fitting dress. You seem to have gained weight. Zhang Yin'er's face froze, and then she smiled and said perfunctorily, everyone will gain weight after giving birth to a child. When you have a child in the future, you will definitely gain weight. Su Ching said, not necessarily. The crown princess did not gain weight after giving birth to twins. She has a good figure. If I have a child in the future, I will not let myself gain weight. Zhang Yin'er originally just wanted to perfunctorily, but she didn't expect to be hit hard. She had never seen the crown princess, so who knew fat and thin. She saw the blue logo skirt in the shop owner's hand and liked it very much. She held Su King's hand as before, and said in a coquettish tone, Ching, this skirt is pretty and suits me very well. In the past, as long as she said she liked it, Su Ching would buy it for her without saying a word. Su Ching glanced at Zhang Yin'er's thick waist, and then looked at the green silk skirt in the shop owner's hand, which was a very figure-flattering one. How is it suitable? Your skirt is suitable for thinner people. Look at your waist. It's probably too tight and not good looking when you wear it. Zhang Yin'er was immediately furious when she heard it, but in order to get the skirt, she didn't dare to lose her temper, but smiled and said, I'm a little fat now, but I will lose weight after a while. Ching, we are such good friends, right? Caixia couldn't like Zhang Yin'er when she saw her. In the past, she always asked the lady to buy her this and that. She was too thick-skinned. Miss, it's getting late, we should go back. That's right. Su Ching looked at the boss, pack this up. Zhang Yin'er smiled flatteringly, Ching, can we go to dinner together later? Su Ching agreed readily, okay, I won't refuse if you want to treat me, let's go to Fengxian restaurant, the food there is the best for my taste. Ah, Zhang Yin'er's smile froze. A casual meal at Feng Xian restaurant would cost several taels of silver, which she could only earn back by embroidering for a year. Ching ching, you see I didn't bring any money with me today. You treat me this time, and I will treat you next time, okay? Su Ching Ching frowned, you didn't bring any money, and you still want to have dinner. Zhang Yin'er smiled awkwardly, Ching Ching, didn't I say I'd go with you? How lonely it would be to eat alone. At this time, the shop owner took the packed clothes and handed them over with a smile, Su Qianjin, the clothes you want. Zhang Yin'er happily reached out to take them, but when she was about to get them, Su Ching Ching took them away halfway. She looked at Su Ching Ching in confusion, Ching Ching, what's wrong? Nothing, Su Ching Ching told Caixia, pay the bill. Caixia took out her purse, took out 10 taels of silver and handed it to the shop owner. Ching Ching, let me take the clothes, Zhang Yin'er said, and reached out again but missed. No need, Caixia, just take it. Su Ching Ching handed the clothes to Caixia. Caixia happily took it and hugged it tightly. She almost thought that the lady was going to give it to Zhang Yin'er again. Zhang Yin'er looked at Caixia holding the clothes and was afraid that she would forget to give it to her when she went out later. Ching Ching, give it to me. Caixia must be tired of holding it. Caixia snorted, how can I be tired of holding things for the lady? It's not the first time I go out shopping with the lady. Zhang Yin'er thought to herself that it was a good thing that she was more careful, otherwise Caixia would not give it to her. This is what Ching Ching bought for me. How can I let Miss Caixia take it? Caixia held it and refused to give it to her. Zhang Yin'er had no choice but to look at Su Ching Ching and asked with a smile, Ching Ching, tell me if it's for me. Su Ching Ching pointed at the pink skirt and asked instead, Yin'er, what do you think of this pink skirt? When Zhang Yin'er saw the pink skirt, she immediately wanted Su Ching Ching to buy it for her. It's pretty, it's not bad to buy this one. I like it too. Su Ching Ching looked at Zhang Yin'er and said with a smile, I bought so many clothes and jewelry for you, it's not too much for you to buy a piece of clothing for me, right? Zhang Yin'er, but this shop, the clothes she bought can't be sold without 10 taels of silver. She embroidered handkerchiefs for 2 years to sell 10 taels of silver. Ching Ching, it's not that I don't want to buy it, it's that I don't have any money on me, how can I buy it for you? The shop owner smiled and said, we are all acquaintances, we can buy on credit. Zhang Yin'er glared at the shop owner. She was not stupid, so she paid 10 taels of silver. Su Ching Ching looked at me, Zhang Yin'er, with a smile, Yin'er, you can buy on credit. Ching Ching, don't you have to pay back on credit? How can I have so much money? I embroider those handkerchiefs every day, and I can't even make ends meet. Zhang Yin'er burst into tears. Su Ching Ching looked at Zhang Yin'er and cried, just like before, trying to win her sympathy. Okay, let's go to Feng Xianlu for dinner. Zhang Yin'er wiped her tears, Ching Ching, you are really so good, and you are also my only friend. Su Ching Ching. The only friend who is an ATM. Su Ching Ching read modern vernacular books and learned a lot of modern words. Zhang Yin'er just treated her as an ATM, only taking out but not taking in. Feng Xian restaurant is a place Su Ching Ching often comes to, and the shopkeepers all know her. Following the waiter to the private room, Zhang Yin'er started ordering dishes as soon as she sat down. Buddha jumps over the wall, crystal pork elbow, steamed abalone, ginseng black chicken soup. Su Ching Ching listened to Zhang Yin'er ordering dishes that were all signature dishes and the most expensive. She just watched without saying anything and let her order. After Zhang Yin'er ordered the dishes she wanted to eat, she asked Su Ching Ching, Ching Ching, what do you want to eat? Su Ching Ching said, that's all. I'm not picky. Zhang Yin'er turned to the waiter and said, then give me another steamed preserved meat. Okay, the waiter took the menu and left. After the dishes were served, Zhang Yin'er couldn't wait to pick up the chopsticks and put the crystal pork elbow into the bowl. Su Qingqing ate slowly and looked up at Zhang Yin'er. She looked like she hadn't eaten in several lifetimes. But then again, Zhang Yin'er's family couldn't afford Feng Xianlu at all. She had been in the palace for so many years, and Zhang Yin'er probably had never been there once. After Su Qingqing was full, she wiped her mouth with a handkerchief and stood up to leave. Zhang Yin'er saw that there were still many dishes left, and hurriedly asked, "Qingqing, you don't want to eat any more?" Su Qingqing smiled and said, "Take your time, don't be in a hurry, you can pack up if you can't finish it." Zhang Yin'er nodded happily. "Qingqing makes sense, then I won't be polite." Su Qingqing raised the corners of her lips, retracted her gaze and walked out. Before leaving, Su Qingqing said to the shopkeeper, "I'm leaving first, Zhang Yin'er will pay the bill." This trick was learned from the storybook. Thinking of Zhang Yin'er's face when she had to pay so much silver, she felt refreshed. The shopkeeper smiled and sent Su Qingqing away, and turned to go to the private room on the second floor. The waiter fiddled with the abacus and said, "Miss Zhang, a total of 18 taels of silver. You ask Su Qingqing to pay the bill, and by the way, pack all these." Zhang Yin'er pointed to the dishes that were still mostly left on the table. She planned to pack them back for her husband to try, as he had not eaten the food in Feng Xianlu yet. "Mrsu asked you to pay the bill." The shopkeeper's words fluttered, leaving Zhang Yin'er stunned. "Impossible, how could Qingqing ask me to pay the bill? When I came here to eat with Qingqing before, it was Qingqing who treated me." Zhang Yin'er stood up and walked out. The shopkeeper shouted angrily, "You want to eat a free meal? Come on, stop her." Two burly men stopped Zhang Yin'er at the door. Zhang Yin'er had never seen such a scene before, and her legs went weak immediately. "What do you want to do?" The shopkeeper said, "Pay the meal and I'll let you go." Zhang Yin'er cried immediately, "I'm just an ordinary woman, where can I get so much money?" The shopkeeper said, "Then it's none of my business. If you go to the government office, I'm right." When Zhang Yin'er heard that she had to go to the government office, her legs went weak and she fell to the ground. On the busy street, Su Qingqing walked happily. Caixia said happily, "Miss, I found that you have become smarter." Su Qingqing adjusted the embroidery on her temples and said proudly, "I have always been very smart, okay." Caixia nodded quickly, yes, Miss has always been smart, but it wasted a lot of money, but it was all worth it." Su Qingqing snorted, "I was young and ignorant before, and it's not so easy to take advantage of me now." Just as the two were talking and laughing, a man suddenly rushed over from the opposite side and snatched the package from Caixia's hand. He dared to snatch things in the street under the feet of the emperor, so brave. Su Qingqing saw her favorite skirt being snatched away and immediately chased after him. Caixia was hit hard, and when she reacted, she saw the young lady running away, and she hurriedly chased after her. Miss. Su Qingqing chased all the way to the alley and saw the robber who had no way to retreat. She picked up the wooden stick on the ground. Although she didn't have much kung fu, it was more than enough to deal with a small minion. Just as Su Qingqing was about to beat up the robber with a stick, she suddenly felt a sharp pain in the back of her neck, and her eyes went dark, and she fainted. The man behind her hugged her shaky body. Mei Yisai came over with a folding fan, looking at Su Qingqing who had fainted, and a sly smile appeared on the corner of his lips. "Take her away." But after a while, Caixia could no longer see Su Qingqing, and she looked around but couldn't find her. Looking at the busy streets, Caixia immediately cried anxiously, Miss, where have you been?" When Su Qingqing woke up, she found herself in a carriage, because the sound of wheels was all around her ears. The pain in her back of the neck still shows how cruel the other party was. She had a cloth strip stuffed in her mouth, and she couldn't make any sound. She suddenly thought of kidnapping and human traffickers. No matter which one, it was not a good thing. Wouldn't she be so unlucky? It would be nice if Jun Wuxian was here. Good evening, babies. Please support me with monthly tickets and recommendation tickets.